My parents abandoned me at my grandfather's house when I was just 5 years old. The day he died, they returned not to mourn his passing, but to claim his home. My sister was already choosing her new bedroom, while my mother coldly ordered me to pack my bags. But I had followed my grandfather's final instruction. When the truth finally came out, their smug smiles vanished. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to stand your ground against greedy family members. My name is Maya Jenkins, and I am 32 years old. Today, I buried the only real parent I ever knew. My grandfather, Marcus Jenkins, whom everyone in our Atlanta neighborhood affectionately called Pops. He passed away at 78, leaving a void in my heart that felt impossible to fill. The repast was held at his house. This was the sturdy brick house where he raised me after my mother Valerie and my father Calvin decided I was too much of an inconvenience for their lifestyle. I spent the last 2 days cooking, baking, and organizing to make sure Pops received the traditional homegoing celebration he deserved. The dining room table was covered with fried chicken, baked macaroni and cheese, collard greens, and pound cake. Church members filled the living room sharing beautiful memories. The atmosphere was heavy with grief, but wrapped in love, until the front door swung open. The conversations immediately died down. My mother Valerie and my father Calvin walked through the door. They had not shed a single tear at the service. My mother was dressed in a custom black designer suit that looked more appropriate for a runway than a morning service. She wore a wide-brimmed hat and oversized sunglasses that she did not bother taking off indoors. My father trailed behind her, adjusting his expensive watch and looking around the house with a calculating gleam in his eye. They walked straight past the people who had actually loved Pops. Right behind them was my older sister, Nia. Nia is 35 years old and has always been their golden child. She walked in holding a designer handbag that probably cost more than some people's cars. Following closely behind Nia was her husband, Connor. Connor is a 36-year-old white financial broker who has always looked down on our family. He carries himself with a level of entitlement that is genuinely exhausting to witness. He has always spoken to me as if I were uneducated, completely unaware that I am the founder and chief executive officer of a highly successful financial technology company. I keep my wealth extremely quiet. I wear simple clothes, drive an older car, and prefer to let my success speak for itself. As the last few church members offered their condolences and quietly slipped out the front door, the true nature of my biological family was instantly put on display. The house had not even emptied completely before Connor pulled a metal measuring tape out of his pocket. I stood by the kitchen island holding a cup of hot tea, watching him in absolute disbelief. He did not offer me a word of comfort or ask how I was holding up. Instead, he walked right up to the wall separating the kitchen from the living room and stretched the metal tape across the drywall. "This wall definitely has to go," Connor announced loudly to Nia. His voice echoed in the quiet house. "If we knock this down, we can create a modern open-concept layout. It will maximize the resale value or make it a great investment property for our portfolio. We just need to check if it is load-bearing." Nia clapped her hands together, looking around the cozy living room with profound disgust. "I completely agree," she said. "This whole place is so outdated. It smells like old books and peppermint. We are going to have to gut the entire interior. But first I need to figure out the bedroom situation." I watched them plotting the destruction of my childhood home while my grandfather's scent still lingered in the air. My father Calvin was already in the kitchen opening the refrigerator and inspecting the appliances. "We can probably get a decent price for this stove," Calvin muttered to my mother. "It is stainless steel, so we should sell it before we bring the contractors in." Nia did not even wait for her husband to finish measuring the walls. She marched straight down the hallway toward my grandfather's master suite. That room was sacred to me. It held his vintage chessboard, his collection of jazz records, and the armchair where he used to read to me every night. I heard the door creak open and Nia let out a dramatic sigh of satisfaction. "Connor, come look at this!" Nia shouted from down the hall. "The square footage in here is actually decent. Once we throw out all this junk and rip up this terrible carpet, this space will be perfect. This master suite is going to be my new walk-in closet. We can use the guest room as our actual bedroom when we stay here during the renovations. I stood frozen by the counter. My blood boiled. My sister was treating my grandfather's room like a cheap clearance sale item she had just scored. My mother, Valerie, walked over. She looked me up and down with disdain. She slammed her expensive purse onto the granite countertop, narrowly missing the food. "The house is ours now," Valerie declared, her voice devoid of warmth. "Connor already spoke to a real estate group. So stop standing around looking miserable. You need to pack your things right now." Valerie reaches into her oversized designer tote bag with a dramatic sigh. She pulls out a thick manila folder wrapped in a protective clear plastic sleeve. She tosses it onto the kitchen island. It hits the granite countertop with a loud smack, landing right next to the platter of fried chicken and the foil-covered trays of food I spent the last 2 days preparing for the community. Inside the clear plastic, I can see the stark, bold lettering of my grandfather's official death certificate. Lying just beneath it is a yellowed document bearing the title Last Will and Testament. "The funeral is over," Valerie says, her voice sharp and completely devoid of any maternal warmth. "The mourning period is officially concluded. You have exactly 48 hours to get your belongings out of this house." I stare at the plastic-wrapped folder, then back up at her perfectly contoured face. 48 hours, I repeat, keeping my tone dangerously level. Connor walks into the kitchen, letting his metal measuring tape snap shut with a loud mechanical click. He leans against the counter, crossing his arms over his expensive tailored shirt. "Yes, 48 hours," Connor chimes in, taking over the conversation, as if he is the patriarch of this family. "I have already lined up an all-cash buyer from a major investment firm. They specialize in flipping outdated properties in this exact zip code. They are doing their initial walkthrough on Tuesday morning. We are going to close this deal fast, so I am not going to have you lingering around here making the place look messy and complicated. You need to pack whatever little clothes you have and vacate the premises." My father, Calvin, steps forward, nodding vigorously in agreement with his white son-in-law. "Listen to Connor," Maya, Calvin says, puffing out his chest to appear authoritative. "He knows what he is doing. The market is hot right now, and your mother and I have a lot of outstanding debts we need to clear up. We cannot afford to sit on this property. You are a grown woman. It is time you figure out your own life instead of leeching off your grandfather's charity." The sheer audacity of the word charity makes my jaw clench. Pops never treated me like charity. He treated me like his daughter. He attended every parent-teacher conference, he clapped the loudest at my high school graduation, and he was the only one who celebrated when I got my college degree. My biological parents did not even bother to send a text message for any of those milestones. Nia struts out of the hallway, returning from my grandfather's master suite. She is holding a small vintage mahogany box that I immediately recognize. It is the box where Pops kept his collection of vintage watches and his gold cufflinks. Nia has tucked it casually under her arm, like it is a souvenir she picked up at a gift shop. "Honestly, Maya, you should be thanking us," Nia says, flipping her expensive weave over her shoulder. "Mom and Dad are giving you 2 whole days to figure out your living situation. If it were up to me, I would have changed the locks this afternoon. You have been living here rent-free your entire life. It is time for you to face the real world. You can go rent a cheap apartment somewhere, maybe get a roommate. But this house is our inheritance." My right hand slides deep into the pocket of my black morning dress. My fingers wrap tightly around the cold, heavy brass key that Pops gave me when I turned 18. The physical weight of the metal grounds me, anchoring me to reality, when everything else in the room feels like a twisted nightmare. I run my thumb over the familiar grooves of the key. I do not cry. I do not raise my voice. I look directly into the eyes of the woman who gave birth to me. 27 years ago, I state the facts with absolute clinical precision, refusing to let my voice shake. 27 years ago, you shoved a $20 bill into my tiny 5-year-old hand. You pushed me through Grandpa's front door, and you drove off in your lover's Cadillac. The kitchen goes dead silent. My mother stiffens her eyes, darting nervously toward Connor, who looks momentarily uncomfortable at the mention of her past indiscretions. "You did not look back once I continued, taking a slow step forward. You did not call the next day to see if I was crying. You did not care if I was scared or hungry. You just erased me from your life because I was a financial burden that was getting in the way of your new lifestyle. And now, the very day we put the man who actually raised me into the ground, you are back to kick me out of the only place I have ever called home. Valerie scoffs, offended by the unfiltered truth. She places a hand on her chest, performing her best impression of a wounded matriarch. I gave you to my father because I wanted you to have a stable environment. She lies smoothly, rewriting history right in front of me. I made a sacrifice for your own good. I was a struggling young mother. You have no idea the pain I went through to make that hard choice. And this is the thanks I get. You are an ungrateful, bitter child. You are just mad because you are stuck working a dead-end job while we are moving forward with our lives. Nia interjects, stepping closer to our mother to present a united front. Mom is the sole legal heir, Maya. The will clearly states that everything goes to her. So your little guilt trip is not going to work. We are not giving you a dime of this estate. Calvin points a stern finger at me. Do not speak to your mother that way. We are grieving too. We came here to handle family business, not to be disrespected by a child who has done nothing with her life. 2 days, Maya. That is our final offer. After that, we are bringing in a crew to clear out whatever garbage you leave behind. I look at the plastic-wrapped folder on the counter. I can clearly see the date stamped on the old will visible through the clear sleeve. It is dated 15 years ago. A small cold smile tugs at the corner of my mouth. They are so blindingly arrogant, so consumed by their own greed that they actually believe they hold all the cards. They think they are evicting a helpless, broke woman who relies on the charity of a deceased old man. They have no idea who I really am, or what I have spent the last decade building. I do not cry. I do not raise my voice. I reach across the granite countertop and pick up my ceramic mug of sweet tea. The ice clinks softly against the rim. I bring the cup to my lips and take a slow, deliberate sip. The sweet, cold liquid slides down my throat, giving me a moment to let their ridiculous demands hang in the heavy air of the kitchen. They are waiting for a reaction. They want me to break down. They want me to scream and beg and validate their twisted sense of superiority. I refuse to give them the satisfaction. Connor scoffs at my silence. He steps closer to the island, slapping his palm flat against the stone surface. He thinks he can intimidate me with his physical presence. Did you hear us, Maya? This is not a negotiation. You are a tenant without a lease. I have contractors scheduled to come in here and rip out these outdated cabinets by Friday morning. If you make this difficult, I will have my lawyers draft an eviction notice so fast your head will spin. I have handled corporate acquisitions worth tens of millions of dollars. Do not think for a second you can outsmart me over a rundown residential property. I look at his manicured hands. These are the hands of a man who has never built anything from the ground up. He inherited his wealth. He married my sister for her supposed status. He looks at my grandfather's house and sees nothing but profit margins and resale values. He does not see the sweat and blood Pops poured into this foundation. Nia chimes in, crossing her arms tightly. You are just embarrassing yourself now, Maya. Stop acting like you own the place. You have always been jealous of my success. You have always hated that Connor and I have real money while you are stuck serving coffee or whatever it is you actually do. Dad is right. You need to grow up. Mom holds the deed now. We are doing you a favor by giving you a 2-day head start. Most property investors would have you thrown out by the sheriff tonight. Valerie touches her pearl necklace, feigning exhaustion. She sighs heavily, playing the role of the burdened matriarch. I paid for this funeral, she lies smoothly, completely ignoring the fact that I personally wired the funds to the funeral home 3 days ago. I handled the arrangements. I am trying to be generous here. I am giving you 48 hours. Be grateful I am still treating you like a daughter after the profound disrespect you just showed me. You should be packing boxes instead of drinking tea and glaring at your family. Calvin points a trembling finger at me. That is enough. We are done talking. You are packing your bags tonight. Connor is bringing his crew on Friday to start demolition, and that is the end of it. We are not going to stand here and argue with a child who contributes nothing to this family. I set my mug down. The sound is a sharp thud that makes Calvin flinch. I look at each of them. 4 people consumed by a greed so deep it has rotted them from the inside out. They are standing in the house of a man who died 2 days ago, fighting over the scraps of his legacy. You brought a measuring tape to a repast, Connor, I say. I speak the words slowly, letting the sheer disrespect of his actions resonate through the room. You walked past grieving family members and community leaders so you could measure walls for an open concept layout. You did not even have the basic decency to wait until my grandfather's body was cold in the ground. Connor rolls his eyes, letting out a loud sigh of profound annoyance. Business is business, Maya. Real estate does not wait for feelings. The market fluctuates daily. I am protecting my mother-in-law's asset, something you clearly know absolutely nothing about. I have a highly paid demolition crew ready to tear up these old floors and modernize this entire space. I turn my attention to Nia, ignoring his arrogant justification. And you walked straight into his bedroom to claim it as a closet. You want to throw away his vintage chessboard and his jazz records so you can store your designer shoes. Shoes you bought using credit cards you cannot even afford to pay off. Nia SPS, her face turning a deep shade of crimson. Keep your mouth shut about my finances. You know nothing about my life or my bank accounts. You are just a bitter, broke spinster who has to leech off a dead man. I look back at Connor. He is holding that metal measuring tape, tapping it against his palm with a smug, arrogant grin. He genuinely believes he holds all the power in this room. He believes he has cornered a helpless, broke woman who has no resources and no allies to fight back. He thinks this old house is his new playground and that his white-collar status makes him untouchable. I take one step closer to him, closing the distance. My voice drops to a chilling whisper that cuts through the tension in the room like a razor blade. Measure carefully, Connor. Because for every scratch you put on these hardwood floors, my insurance company will bill you for half your life's worth. Connor throws his head back and barks out a harsh, booming laugh. The sound bounces off the kitchen walls, entirely devoid of humor. He looks at me as if I have just told the most pathetic joke he has ever heard. He slides the metal measuring tape into the pocket of his designer slacks and takes a deliberate step forward. He invades my personal space, towering over me, with the unearned confidence of a man who has never been told no. He thinks his height and his tailored suit give him absolute authority in a house that does not belong to him. Your insurance company, Connor repeats the words, dripping with heavy sarcasm. What insurance company, Maya? Are we talking about some basic renter's policy you bought online for $15 a month? Do you even know how real property insurance works? You are standing here making empty threats about a house you do not even own. You are a wage worker, Maya. You clock in, you clock out, and you barely make enough to cover your basic living expenses. You do not have the resources or the legal standing to bill me for a single dime. He reaches into the inner pocket of his blazer and pulls out a crisp, folded document. He snaps it open with a flick of his wrist and shoves it into my line of sight. He points a perfectly manicured finger at the signature line at the bottom of the page, ensuring I see the ink. Do you know what this is? He asks, using a slow, condescending tone, as if he is speaking to an ignorant toddler. Let me break it down for you, since you clearly do not understand how the adult corporate world operates. This is a legally binding power of attorney. Valerie signed it this morning. It gives me full executive authority to act on her behalf regarding all matters related to this estate. I control the sale, I control the contractors, and I control who is allowed to step foot on this property. Connor paces back and forth across the kitchen floor, gesturing wildly with the legal document. He is putting on a performance, playing the role of the brilliant corporate strategist, educating the unwashed masses. You see, Maya, the law does not care about your feelings. The law does not care that you baked a pound cake or that you liked sitting in that old armchair with your grandfather. The law only cares about paper and bloodlines. Valerie is the sole legal heir to Marcus Jenkins. When a person dies without a trust or updated directives, the property automatically goes to the next of kin. That is Valerie, not the granddaughter who happens to be crashing in the spare bedroom. I watch him ramble, taking note of every word, every misplaced ounce of confidence. He is mansplaining probate law to me, completely unaware of the massive trap he is currently walking into. He speaks with such aggressive authority, assuming my silence is a sign of submission and defeat. He thinks I am quiet because I am terrified. He does not realize I am quiet because I am letting him dig his own grave. You are squatting. Connor continues stopping right in front of me again. You are an adult woman squatting in a dead man's house because you have failed to build a life of your own. You have zero assets, zero leverage, and zero rights. So you can drop the tough girl act right now. You are going to pack your cheap clothes into whatever cardboard boxes you can find, and you are going to leave quietly. If you try to fight me on this, I will personally ensure you are dragged out of here in handcuffs. I will ruin whatever pathetic credit score you have with legal fees and court costs. Do you understand me? Before I can even formulate a response, Nia steps up to stand shoulder to shoulder with her husband. She places a manicured hand on Connor's arm, looking at me with pure, unadulterated disgust. She cannot let him have all the fun. She needs to deliver her own verbal blows to secure her position as the superior sibling. Hai is absolutely right, Nia sneers, her voice laced with venom. You are making a fool of yourself, Maya. You are standing here trying to act tough, but you just look pathetic. You have always been pathetic. You are nothing but an ugly, jealous outcast who refuses to accept her place in this family. Nia takes a step closer, her eyes scanning my simple black morning dress with absolute contempt. You have spent your entire life hating me, she accuses loudly. You hate that mom and dad actually love me. You hate that I am beautiful. You hate that I married a successful, wealthy man while you cannot even get a decent date. You look at my high society marriage and my luxury lifestyle and it eats you alive. That is why you are clinging to this rundown house. You are trying to squat here because you have absolutely nothing of your own. You have no husband, no real career, and no future. She crosses her arms, leaning in to deliver her final strike. You thought manipulating Pops in his final years was going to get you a massive payout. You thought if you played the dutiful little caretaker, he would leave you a big piece of the pie. Well, your plan failed, Maya. Mom gets everything. Connor and I are taking over. And you are going right back to the gutter where you belong. You are not on our level. You never were, and you never will be. Now stop embarrassing yourself and get out of my new house. My father, Calvin, nods approvingly from the background, crossing his arms over his chest. He watches his white son-in-law and his golden child verbally eviscerate me, and he does not offer a single word of defense. In fact, he looks proud. He looks incredibly satisfied that Connor is putting me in my place. Valerie simply inspects her fingernails, entirely detached from the cruelty happening right in front of her. She has authorized this execution. She signed the paperwork and handed the weapon to Connor, allowing him to come into my grandfather's house and tear me down. They are a united front of toxicity. They feed off each other's arrogance, validating their shared delusion that I am a helpless victim at their mercy. Connor waves the power of attorney in my face one last time, a triumphant smirk plastered across his face. He expects me to shatter. He expects the tears to finally fall. He expects me to drop to my knees and beg for a few extra days to move my belongings. He expects complete and total surrender. Connor stands there panting from his venomous monologue. I do not shatter or beg for mercy. I stare at him with complete boredom and reach into the pocket of my morning dress. Nia smirks, assuming I am reaching for a tissue. But I pull out my phone. I tap a contact I have saved for years. I press speakerphone and set the device on the granite island next to that useless folder. The phone rings. On the third ring, a deep voice answers. Maya, sweetheart. I am so sorry I could not make it to the repast. The precinct has been a madhouse today. How are you holding up? I look directly at Connor as I reply. I am managing Chief Miller, but I have a situation at the house. I have a group of hostile individuals currently trespassing on the property. They are making threats and refusing to leave. Could you possibly come by? Connor rolls his eyes and crosses his arms, believing this is a pathetic bluff. I will be there in 5 minutes, Maya, the chief says. Just sit tight. I end the call. Connor laughs, shaking his head. You are calling the local cops. Do you think a patrol officer is going to look at a legally binding document signed by the next of kin and side with a squatter? You are wasting city resources, and you are just going to humiliate yourself even more when they put you in the back of a squad car. Valerie steps forward, her face pinched in irritation. You are making a massive mistake, Maya, she says purely out of spite. Calling the police to your grandfather's house on the day of his funeral. Have you no shame? Nia huffs, checking her expensive watch. Let her do it, Mom. Let the police come and drag her out. It will save us the trouble of dealing with her tomorrow. I say absolutely nothing. I pick up my mug of sweet tea and take another sip. The four of them stand there confident in their delusion. They honestly believe their paperwork makes them invincible. Exactly 4 minutes later, heavy footsteps echo on the front porch. A firm knock rattles the wooden door. I walk over and open it. Chief Miller stands there in full uniform, an officer who spent the last 20 years playing chess with my grandfather every Sunday. A younger deputy stands behind him. Chief Miller takes off his hat as he steps into the foyer. He looks at me with genuine sorrow. I am so sorry for your loss, Maya. Marcus was a great man, the best chess player I ever knew. Thank you, Chief, I say softly. I appreciate you coming so quickly. Connor does not waste a second. He marches past me and approaches the chief with the swagger of a man accustomed to giving orders. Officer Connor begins using that same condescending corporate tone. I am glad you are here. My name is Connor, and this is my mother-in-law, Valerie, the sole legal heir to Marcus Jenkins. Maya here is refusing to vacate the premises. We have given her 48 hours as a courtesy, but she is becoming hostile. Connor reaches into his blazer and pulls out the folded document. He thrusts it toward the chief. I have a fully executed power of attorney here. It gives me complete executive control over this estate. I am officially requesting that you remove this woman for trespassing. Chief Miller takes the paper. He pulls a pair of reading glasses from his uniform pocket, slides them onto his face, and reads the document in silence. Connor stands tall, practically vibrating with arrogant satisfaction. He glances back at Nia and Valerie, flashing them a victorious smile. He thinks he has won. He thinks the law is a weapon he can wield against anyone he deems beneath him. Chief Miller finishes reading. He takes off his glasses, slowly folds the document, and hands it back to Connor. Then he shakes his head. I am sorry, son, the chief says, his voice rumbling with quiet authority. But this piece of paper is absolutely worthless here. Connor blinks, the smug smile sliding off his face. Excuse me, what do you mean it is worthless? It is a notarized power of attorney. Valerie owns this house. Chief Miller looks at Valerie, who is suddenly avoiding his gaze. Then he looks back at Connor. I do not know what scam you people are trying to pull here, the chief says sternly. But Marcus Jenkins was a close personal friend of mine. I know for a fact that Valerie has not spoken to her father in over a decade. And I know exactly who owns this property. Connor stammers, his face turning red. The law is clear. It goes to the daughter. You cannot ignore legal documents because you played board games with the deceased. I will have your badge for this. I step forward, moving smoothly past Connor to stand beside Chief Miller. I look directly into Connor's panicked eyes. The temperature in the room seems to drop as I finally drop the bomb I have been holding all afternoon. This house has not been in Marcus Jenkins' name for 5 years, Connor. I say, my voice ringing with chilling clarity. It belongs to a trust. The Marcus Jenkins Irrevocable Trust, to be exact. And trespassing on trust property, without the express permission of the trustee, is a criminal offense in Georgia. Connor freezes. The blood completely drains from his face, leaving him looking like a ghost. Nia gasps, taking a step back as if she has been physically struck. Valerie and Calvin stare at me with wide, terrified eyes. The trustee. Connor breathes out the word, barely a whisper. Yes, Connor. I reply, a cold smile finally touching my lips. The trustee. Which happens to be me. The silence in the kitchen is absolute. The kind of silence that rings in your ears and makes the air feel thick. Connor stares at me, his jaw slightly unhinged. The arrogant posture he held just moments ago completely collapses. He looks at the legal document in his hand, the one he paraded around like a royal decree, and suddenly realizes he is holding nothing but worthless paper. Nia is the first to break the quiet. She lets out a shrill, frantic laugh. You are lying, she shouts, pointing a trembling finger at me. You are absolutely lying. Mom is the next of kin. Grandpa would never give you a trust. You are a high school graduate who serves coffee. He would not trust you with a parking space, let alone $1 million property. Chief Miller crosses his arms over his broad chest. Actually, Nia, he did, the chief states, his voice a low rumble that commands instant respect. Marcus came into the precinct 5 years ago to have his documents witnessed and notarized. He filed a copy of the irrevocable trust with the county clerk and gave me a copy for my personal records because he knew exactly what you people would do the moment his heart stopped beating. He knew you would descend on this house like vultures. Valerie gasps, clutching her pearl necklace as if it might choke her. She looks at the chief, then at me, her eyes wide with a mixture of terror and fury. You manipulated him, Valerie hisses. You poisoned my father's mind against his own daughter. You probably forged those documents when his health started failing. I am going to contest this in court. I am going to have you investigated for elder abuse. I do not flinch. I stand my ground, letting her empty threats bounce right off me. You can try, Mom, I say calmly, but you will be fighting a legal wall of concrete. Pops was of perfectly sound mind. He had 3 different medical professionals sign affidavits verifying his cognitive capacity on the day the trust was established. He anticipated every single one of your greedy little maneuvers. He bulletproofed this estate specifically to keep it out of your hands. Connor is shaking now. His face turns a blotchy shade of crimson. The humiliation of being legally outmaneuvered by a black woman he considers vastly inferior is visibly destroying his ego. He crumples the power of attorney in his fist. This is a sham. Connor spats, his voice cracking. You think a fake trust is going to stop me? I work with corporate sharks who eat local attorneys for breakfast. I will bury you in litigation, Maya. I will drag this out in probate court for the next 10 years until you are bankrupt and begging to settle. Chief Miller steps directly into Connor's line of sight, completely blocking his view of me. You are not listening, son. The chief says, his tone dropping to a dangerous warning level. There is no probate. The house is not in the estate. It belongs to the trust. Maya has the absolute legal authority to dictate who breathes the air in this building. And right now, she wants you gone. The younger deputy steps forward, unhooking the radio from his belt. Do we need to call for backup, Chief? The deputy asks, keeping his eyes fixed on Connor. I do not think that will be necessary, the chief replies. He looks at my father Calvin, who has been shrinking into the background since the word criminal was spoken. Calvin grabs Valerie's arm, pulling her toward the hallway. Valerie, we need to leave. Need to leave, Calvin mutters, his voice thick with cowardice. We will call the lawyers from the car. Just grab your coat. Nia stomps her foot on the hardwood floor, looking like a spoiled child denied a toy. I am not leaving, she screeches. My things are in the master bedroom. I claimed that space. I am not letting her steal my inheritance. Chief Miller points a stern finger toward the front door. You have exactly 2 minutes to collect whatever personal items you carried into this house today, the chief commands. If you are still standing on these floors at the end of those 2 minutes, I am placing all 4 of you under arrest for criminal trespassing. You will leave this property in handcuffs, and you will spend the night in a holding cell. Do I make myself perfectly clear? The threat of being paraded out in handcuffs in front of the entire neighborhood finally pierces through their delusion. Valerie lets out a frustrated sob, grabbing her designer tote bag from the island. She turns on her heel and marches toward the front door, her heels clicking aggressively against the wood. Calvin follows closely behind her, keeping his head down to avoid making eye contact with the police officers. Nia looks at Connor, waiting for her wealthy white husband to magically fix the situation. But Connor is powerless. He glares at the chief, then glares at me. He adjusts his suit jacket, trying to salvage whatever tiny scrap of dignity he has left. He grabs Nia by the elbow and forcefully steers her toward the foyer. Let us go, Nia, Connor mutters through gritted teeth. We are not wasting our time arguing with these people. My legal team will rip this trust to shreds by Monday morning. I walk slowly behind them, flanking Chief Miller as we escort them toward the front entrance. The air in the house already feels lighter. The heavy toxic presence of my biological family is finally being pushed out the door. Valerie and Calvin are already standing on the front porch, whispering frantically to each other. Nia steps outside, her face twisted in a scowl of pure hatred. Connor stops right at the threshold. He cannot just walk away. His massive ego demands that he have the last word. He turns around, gripping the doorframe. He looks at me with eyes full of venom. You think you are so smart? Maya, Connor sneers, his voice dripping with malice. You think you won today. Enjoy your weekend in this dusty old house, because on Monday I am coming back with a court order. I am going to expose this entire scam, and I am going to make sure you pay my legal fees when I do. You are playing a game you cannot possibly win. I stop a few feet away from him. I reach into the left pocket of my morning dress. My fingers wrap around a small metallic object. I pull it out. It is a sleek silver USB drive. I look at Connor watching the arrogant smirk plastered across his face. I do not raise my voice. I do not show an ounce of anger. I simply flick my wrist. I toss the USB drive through the air. It arcs perfectly and hits Connor squarely in the chest. He gasps in surprise, fumbling with his hands to catch it before it hits the wooden porch. He looks down at the small silver device in his palm, then back up at me with profound confusion. That is the security footage of you trying to slip Grandpa's vintage painting into your briefcase 20 minutes ago. I say, my voice echoing into the quiet neighborhood street. Next time you visit, bring a lawyer. The heavy oak doors of Greater Hope Fellowship, close behind the last stragglers of the morning congregation. The sanctuary is a vibrant sea of Sunday best attire, vibrant hats, sharply tailored suits, and the overwhelming scent of peppermints and floral perfume. The choir sways side to side, their voices raising the roof in a powerful crescendo of praise. It is the heart of the community, a place where reputations are built and destroyed before the final benediction is even delivered. And sitting right in the center of the second row, directly in the pastor's line of sight, are Valerie and Calvin. They have completely abandoned the aggressive, arrogant energy they carried into my grandfather's kitchen just 48 hours ago. The designer sunglasses and haughty sneers are gone. Today they are playing a completely different role. Today they are the tragic victims of a cruel, ungrateful child. Valerie is wearing a modest black dress, holding a lace handkerchief tightly in her manicured hands. Calvin sits hunched forward, his shoulders intentionally slumped, staring at the carpeted floor with the tired eyes of a broken man. The music fades out, and Pastor Williams steps up to the polished wooden podium. He wipes his brow with a white towel and asks the congregation if anyone has a special prayer request for the week. This is the moment Valerie has been waiting for. This is her stage. She stands up slowly, letting her knees wobble just enough to draw the attention of the church mothers sitting in the front pew. Sister Jenkins, Pastor Williams says, his voice warm and sympathetic through the microphone. The floor is yours, sister. We are all praying for your family after the loss of our beloved brother Marcus. Valerie takes the cordless microphone handed to her by an usher. She does not speak immediately. She lets out a ragged, manufactured sob that echoes through the massive sanctuary. A collective murmur of sympathy ripples through the pews. Oh, Pastor Valerie begins, her voice trembling with perfectly rehearsed fragility. I stand before you today with a heart shattered into a million pieces. We just laid my father to rest. But the devil is already busy working inside my own family. She pauses, wiping a non-existent tear from her cheek. I need this congregation to pray for my youngest daughter, Maya. The church grows deadly quiet. Everyone knows my grandfather. Everyone knows me as the quiet, respectful granddaughter who sat next to him every Sunday. Valerie grips the microphone tighter, making sure every single person in the room can hear the pain in her voice. You all know the sacrifices I made as a young mother. Valerie continues, spinning a web of absolute lies with terrifying ease. When times were hard, I made the agonizing choice to let my father raise Maya so she could have a stable foundation. I worked my fingers to the bone. Calvin and I sent every spare dollar we had to my father to make sure that girl had food on her plate and clothes on her back. We went without so she could thrive. We paid our dues. We respected the sacred duty of family. We honored the unwritten rule that we take care of our own. Valerie raises her free hand, gesturing toward the stained glass windows. And how does she repay us? How does my own flesh and blood honor the sacrifices her parents made? By stealing the very roof over our heads. She lets out another piercing sob. Mother Davis, a senior member of the church, gasps and shakes her head in disbelief. Valerie locks eyes with the congregation, manipulating their cultural values, weaponizing their deeply held beliefs about respect and duty. My father was old and sick in his final years. She lies, her voice echoing through the silent room. His mind was slipping. And Maya took advantage of that. She manipulated a dying old man. She secretly forced him to sign over his entire estate to her, hiding his assets in some complicated legal trust so her own parents could not touch a single dime. My father would never have left his only daughter out in the cold. Maya tricked him, and she stole our generational wealth. A heavy collective gasp sweeps through the sanctuary. The congregation is hooked. Valerie is weaponizing the black tax, the cultural expectation that success must be shared, and that children owe a lifelong financial debt to the parents who brought them into the world. Calvin plays his part to perfection. As Valerie speaks, he buries his face in his hands, letting his shoulders shake. Deacon Barnes, sitting in the row behind them, reaches forward and places a comforting hand on Calvin's back. Calvin looks up, his eyes bloodshot, giving the deacon a nod of profound defeat. He is soaking up the pity, silently encouraging his wife to drop the final hammer. "We are drowning," Pastor Valerie cries out, her voice breaking into a dramatic plea. "Calvin and I are facing absolute financial ruin. We have debts to pay, medical bills piling up, and we were counting on my father's house to keep us afloat in our old age. It is our birthright." We asked Maya for help. We begged our own daughter to share the blessings we sacrificed to give her. And do you know what she did? She called the police on us. She had her own mother and father threatened with arrest on the exact day we buried my dad. She looked me in the eye and laughed while we were thrown out onto the street. The sanctuary erupts into shocked whispers. The church mothers are fanning themselves furiously, shaking their heads in absolute disgust. "How could she?" someone mutters loudly from the third row. "That is pure evil," another voice whispers. Valerie lowers the microphone, bowing her head, as if the weight of her sorrow is simply too much to bear. She hands the microphone back to the usher and collapses into her seat, burying her face in Calvin's shoulder. Calvin wraps his arm around her, looking up at the pastor with the pleading eyes of a man destroyed by his own offspring. Pastor William steps back up to the podium, gripping the edges tightly. He looks down at Valerie and Calvin with profound sorrow. The congregation is completely inflamed. The narrative has been successfully rewritten. In the span of 10, Valerie has transformed me from a grieving granddaughter into a greedy, manipulative monster who preys on the elderly and abandons her struggling parents. The trap has been set. The entire community has been mobilized against me. They are waiting for the pastor to lead them in a prayer to cast out the wicked daughter, but the prayer never begins. The heavy oak doors at the back of the sanctuary swing open with a loud, booming thud that echoes all the way to the altar. The sunlight from the street outside cuts a sharp, bright path straight down the center aisle. The whispers die instantly. Every single head in the room turns toward the back of the church. I step into the light. I am not wearing a modest morning dress today. I am wearing a sharp, tailored designer suit, holding a massive, thick binder of financial documents under my left arm. I lock eyes with Valerie and Calvin from across the room. Their fake tears vanish in a heartbeat. The real sermon is about to begin. Before I pushed those heavy oak doors open and stepped into the sunlight streaming down the center aisle, I had spent 20 minutes standing completely invisible in the church vestibule. I had not just arrived. I had been listening to exactly what was being seeded into the minds of my community. Connor, my arrogant brother-in-law, had not been sitting quietly in the pew with his grieving wife. Before the service even began, he had actively cornered Elder Thomas and Deacon Barnes by the fellowship bulletin board. I had watched through the narrow crack of the double doors as Connor used his crisp corporate presence to paint a vivid picture of me as a desperate criminal. He leaned in close, lowering his voice to a conspiratorial whisper as he spread malicious rumors designed to completely destroy my credibility. He told the church elders that I was currently under federal investigation for wire fraud. He claimed that the only way a simple wage worker like me could possibly afford the high-powered probate attorneys keeping Valerie out of her rightful home was by funneling dirty money through a massive cryptocurrency scam. Connor played the role of the concerned protective son-in-law perfectly. I told the deacons he was just trying to shield his wife's family from my dangerous illegal activities and warned them that my presence was a liability to the church's pristine reputation. The church elders had soaked up every single word. Connor's lies gave them a perfectly logical reason to hate me. It fit their narrow narrative. In their minds, a young black woman from a broken home could not possibly outsmart a wealthy white financial broker through legal means unless she was doing something highly illegal. Connor weaponized his race, his expensive suit, and his corporate vocabulary to validate my mother's dramatic lies. He set the stage so that when Valerie performed her tearful monologue, the congregation was already primed to view me as a monster. But now I am walking down the center aisle of Greater Hope Fellowship, and the narrative is about to violently shift. My heels click rhythmically against the polished hardwood floor between the burgundy carpet runners. Every single eye in the sanctuary tracks my movement. The silence is absolutely deafening. I do not rush my steps. I do not look down at my feet. I hold my head high, radiating a cold, untouchable authority. I am not wearing a modest morning dress today. I am wearing a sharp-tailored charcoal designer suit that screams executive power. Under my left arm is the weapon that will dismantle their entire reality. It is a massive 4-inch thick black binder. It weighs nearly 5 pounds, and it is packed to the brim with certified bank statements, wire transfer receipts, property deeds, and stamped legal affidavits. It is the undeniable paper trail of Marcus Jenkins. It is a physical manifestation of the truth, and I am about to drop it right on their heads. I reach the front of the church, stopping just a few feet away from the second pew where my biological family sits. Pastor Williams looks down at me from the pulpit with a mixture of deep apprehension and pastoral authority. He grips the edges of the wooden lectern, stepping forward to intercept me. Maya, Pastor Williams says, his voice tight and echoing slightly through the sound system. This is a time of worship and healing for your mother. We do not want any disruptions in the house of the Lord today. I do not raise my voice. I speak with the crisp, clean enunciation of a woman who owns the very ground she stands on. Pastor Williams, I respect this sanctuary, and I respect you, I say, making sure my voice carries to the back rows without the need for a microphone. But my grandfather, Marcus Jenkins, helped lay the literal bricks for this building. He paid for the stained glass window right above your head. And I will not allow his legacy to be dragged through the mud by people who only visited him when they needed a financial handout. A sharp collective gasp ripples through the front pews. I turn my body away from the pulpit and face my parents directly. Valerie is visibly trembling now. Her hands clutch her black leather purse so tightly that her knuckles are completely white. The theatrical tears have instantly dried up, leaving nothing but raw panic on her face. Calvin has lost all his false bravado. He shrinks back into the hard wooden bench, trying to fold into himself and make his presence invisible. Nia glares at me with pure hatred, but she stays perfectly quiet, knowing her husband is supposed to be her ultimate shield. Right on cue, Connor stands up. He steps sideways into the center aisle, physically blocking my path to Valerie and Calvin. He puffs out his chest, trying to use his height to intimidate me now. You need to leave right now. Maya, Connor demands, his voice low but aggressively hostile. You are disturbing a religious service. You are a fraud and a criminal. We know exactly how you are paying for those lawyers. I have already advised the church board to contact the authorities about your financial scams. If you do not turn around and walk out those doors this second, I will have you forcefully removed for trespassing. I look up at him, completely unbothered by his posturing. A slow, predatory smile spreads across my face. I shift the massive black binder from under my arm and hold it firmly in both hands. Trespassing, I repeat the word, letting it echo clearly into the dead quiet sanctuary. That is a fascinating choice of words, Connor. You think I am a criminal because I hired a lawyer. You spent the morning whispering in the lobby to destroy my name, but you forgot one very important detail. Numbers do not lie. Let us start exposing yours. I step forward, forcing Connor to either hold his ground and physically assault me in front of a church full of witnesses or step aside. His corporate bravery fractures under the weight of hundreds of staring eyes. He shifts his weight and I brush past his shoulder, marching directly to the front of the sanctuary. I do not ask Pastor Williams for permission. I step right up to the polished wooden podium, placing the massive black binder down with a heavy thud that reverberates through the microphone. I look out over the sea of faces, watching the church mothers, the deacons, and the choir members leaning forward in their pews. Mom says she is in debt because of raising me. I project my voice clearly and steadily into the microphone. She just stood before this congregation crying about how she sacrificed everything for my stability. She claimed I stole the family inheritance and left her drowning in financial ruin. Let us read the bank statements. I flip open the heavy cover of the binder. The sharp sound of the turning pages slices through the dead silence of the sanctuary. I pull out a stack of papers stamped with official bank seals and hold the first page up for the front rows to see. For the last 10 years, my grandfather, Marcus Jenkins, kept meticulous records of every single dollar that left his accounts. I announce, my eyes locking onto Valerie, who is now clutching Calvin's arm in sheer terror. Pops did not just keep receipts. He kept signed promissory notes. He kept copies of cashier's checks. And he kept a ledger of exactly where the generational wealth of this family actually went. I turn to the first tab in the binder. Let us start with my beautiful, successful sister, Nia. Nia jumps in her seat, her perfectly styled hair trembling. "Do not you dare say a word about me," she shrieks from the pew. But her husband Connor puts a heavy hand on her shoulder, trying to silence her before she makes it worse. Nia loves to boast about her luxury lifestyle. I continue smoothly, completely ignoring her outburst. But her lifestyle was funded entirely by the man she just tried to evict me from. 4 years ago, Nia maxed out 6 different premium credit cards, buying designer clothes, luxury vacations, and expensive dinners to impress her high society friends. When the collection agencies threatened to sue her, she came crying to Grandpa Pops. I read directly from the highlighted bank statement. On October 12th, Pops wired $45,000 to clear her debt. 2 years later, he wired another $32,000 to prevent her luxury car from being repossessed. The congregation gasps. Whispers break out across the sanctuary. The church mothers, who just minutes ago were looking at Nia with sympathy, are now shaking their heads in profound disappointment. Nia buries her face in her hands, completely humiliated. But we are just getting started, I say, turning to the second tab. Let us talk about the matriarch of this family. Valerie claims she is facing absolute financial ruin because I manipulated a dying old man. But the truth is, Valerie has been facing financial ruin for over a decade because she refuses to live within her means. I pull out a stack of mortgage statements. 7 years ago, Valerie and Calvin were 60 days away from having their house foreclosed on. They had taken out multiple second mortgages to fund country club memberships and overseas vacations. Who saved them? Pops did. He paid $120,000 to catch up on their mortgage and keep a roof over their heads. And he continued paying their monthly property taxes until the day he died. Valerie lets out a strangled gasp. She looks around frantically, trying to find a friendly face in the crowd, but the congregation is staring at her with utter disdain. Her entire victim narrative has been completely shredded. The righteous, suffering mother routine is dead. I am not finished. I state, my voice growing colder and sharper. I turn to the third tab, the one marked with bright red ink. I look directly at my father Calvin, who is currently staring at the floor, wishing the carpet would swallow him whole. Let us talk about Calvin, the devoted father and husband. 3 years ago, Calvin took a sudden, unexplained business trip to Las Vegas. The family was told he was attending a real estate conference. I pull out a certified court document, holding it high in the air. This is a bail receipt and a court settlement ledger. Calvin was not at a conference. He was arrested for illegal underground gambling and writing fraudulent checks to cover his massive losses. The sanctuary erupts. Deacon Barnes, who had just been comforting Calvin physically, slides away from him on the wooden bench. The level of scandal is unprecedented. Pastor Williams closes his eyes, gripping the bridge of his nose in sheer disbelief. I was facing 5 years in a federal penitentiary, I announced, cutting through the rising noise of the crowd. He was going to lose everything. So Valerie begged her father to save her husband. Pops liquidated a massive portion of his retirement portfolio. He paid $250,000 in restitution to keep Calvin out of prison and another $50,000 in legal fees to get the record sealed. I close the massive binder with a final resounding thud. I look out over the shocked, horrified faces of the Greater Hope Fellowship congregation. In total, I say, my voice dropping to a low, deadly register, over the last 10 years, Marcus Jenkins secretly paid out more than $800,000 to keep this family afloat. He funded their luxury lifestyle, he covered their reckless debts, and he kept them out of federal prison. That is where your generational wealth went. It was not stolen by an ungrateful daughter. It was squandered by a family of greedy, entitled parasites who bled an old man dry and then had the sheer audacity to complain that he did not leave them more. I step out from behind the podium. The absolute destruction of their reputation is complete. I watch Valerie weeping real tears of profound social ruin. I watch Calvin completely paralyzed by shame. I watch Nia trying to hide behind her husband. But my eyes finally settle on Connor, who is staring at me with a look of pure, unadulterated terror. He realizes now that the binder under my arm holds every single secret this family possesses, and I am walking directly toward him. I step down from the raised altar and walk toward the second pew. The heavy silence in the sanctuary is absolute. Nobody breathes. The church mothers are staring at Connor with sheer contempt. Connor is frozen. His tailored suit suddenly looks 2 sizes too big. The arrogant sneer he wore in the lobby has completely vanished. He tries to straighten his posture, attempting to salvage whatever shred of dignity he has left. He adjusts his tie with trembling fingers. "You are out of your mind, Maya," he mutters, his voice lacking any previous corporate authority. "You think you can march in here with fabricated papers and destroy a respectable family. I am calling my legal team. We are going to sue you for defamation. You will be paying us damages for the rest of your natural life." I stop exactly 2 feet away from him, planting both my feet firmly on the carpet. I do not flinch at his empty threats. Instead, I tilt my head and look at him with a mixture of profound pity and absolute disgust. "Defamation requires a lie, Connor." I state, my voice carrying easily through the quiet church. "Everything in this binder is a certified financial record. Since you love talking about corporate assets, let us talk about your investment fund. Let us talk about your beloved Vanguard Financial Solutions." Connor visibly swallows hard. His eyes dart nervously toward Pastor Williams standing at the pulpit, then snap back to me. "Keep my business out of this," he hisses through clenched teeth. "This is a private family matter. It stopped being a private family matter the second you cornered Deacon Barnes in the vestibule and accused me of federal wire fraud," I counter sharply. "You wanted to talk about money in the house of the Lord, so let us talk about your money." I open the heavy black binder, balancing it on my forearm. I flip past the red tabs exposing my family and land on a solid black tab at the back. I pull out a single sheet of premium watermarked paper. It is a commercial loan agreement. "14 months ago, your prestigious investment fund was bleeding cash," I announced to the entire congregation. "You made a series of reckless, unauthorized trades, losing millions of your clients' money. The Securities and Exchange Commission was preparing an audit that would have stripped your license and sent you to federal prison for criminal negligence. You went to 7 different major banks begging for a corporate bailout. Every single one of them laughed you out of their offices. Your career was completely dead." Nia looks up at her husband, her tear-streaked face twisting in confusion. "Connor, what is she talking about?" Nia asks, her voice shaking. "You told me the business was having a record-breaking year. You bought me a diamond tennis bracelet for our anniversary." "He bought that bracelet with borrowed money," Nia, I say, not breaking eye contact with Connor. "On the very last day before his firm was forced into corporate bankruptcy, a miracle happened. A commercial bank suddenly approved a high-risk $2 million lifeline loan. It saved his company. It saved his license. It saved his luxury lifestyle." Connor is shaking, sweat beads on his forehead. "You have no idea what you are talking about," he stammers. "I negotiated that deal myself. The bank saw the value in my portfolio projections. They recognized my market strategies. I saved my own firm." I let out a sharp, humorless laugh. "Do you really believe that, Connor? Do you honestly believe a Tier 1 commercial bank was just feeling generous to a mediocre broker with a failing portfolio?" Do you think your amateur market projections convinced a board of directors to hand over $2 million without collateral? I step even closer, forcing him to look down at the watermarked paper in my hand. I hold it up high enough for the church elders in the adjacent pews to see the bold black signatures at the bottom of the page. Banks do not give out $2 million loans to sinking ships without an ironclad safety net, I say, my voice dropping to a deadly serious tone. They required a guarantor. They required an anonymous high net worth individual to place $2 million of liquid capital into an escrow account to secure your debt. If you default on a single payment, the bank seizes the guarantor's cash. Connor's face goes completely pale. The blood drains from his cheeks, leaving his skin a sickly translucent gray. He stares at the paper in my hand. His eyes lock onto the signature line. Do you know who that anonymous guarantor was, Connor? I ask, leaning close so he hears every syllable clearly. Do you know who quietly put $2 million in a frozen account just to make sure her sister did not end up married to a convicted felon? Connor opens his mouth, but no sound comes out. He looks at me as if he is staring at a ghost. He realizes the devastating truth. He did not save his company. I saved it. You. I hear him whisper, his voice cracking under the weight of his own profound humiliation. Yes, Connor, me, I reply firmly. I am the anonymous guarantor. The woman you tried to kick out of her grandfather's house. The woman you accused of running a cryptocurrency scam. The woman you called an ugly, jealous outcast. I hold the strings to your entire corporate existence. I close the binder and tuck it neatly back under my arm. According to Section 4, Paragraph 3 of that exact commercial loan agreement, the guarantor has the absolute legal right to withdraw financial backing at any time, giving the bank immediate authorization to call in the debt in full. I turn my back on him. I look up at the pulpit, giving Pastor Williams a polite, respectful nod. Then I look at my mother and father, who are still sitting frozen in the pew, completely destroyed by the monster they created. I will be contacting the bank first thing tomorrow morning, I announce over my shoulder, speaking to Connor, but ensuring the entire church hears the final judgment. You have exactly 24 hours to find $2 million in liquid cash, Connor. I suggest you start packing your bags. I walk back down the center aisle, the heavy oak doors swinging open to let the bright Sunday sunlight wash over me as I leave them sitting in the ruins of their own lies. My parents abandoned me at my grandfather's house when I was just 5 years old. The day he died, they returned not to mourn his passing, but to claim his home. My sister was already choosing her new bedroom, while my mother coldly ordered me to pack my bags. But I had followed my grandfather's final instruction. When the truth finally came out, their smug smiles vanished. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to stand your ground against greedy family members. My name is Maya Jenkins, and I am 32 years old. Today, I buried the only real parent I ever knew. My grandfather, Marcus Jenkins, whom everyone in our Atlanta neighborhood affectionately called Pops. He passed away at 78, leaving a void in my heart that felt impossible to fill. The repast was held at his house. This was the sturdy brick house where he raised me after my mother Valerie and my father Calvin decided I was too much of an inconvenience for their lifestyle. I spent the last 2 days cooking, baking, and organizing to make sure Pops received the traditional home-going celebration he deserved. The dining room table was covered with fried chicken, baked macaroni and cheese, collard greens, and pound cake. Church members filled the living room, sharing beautiful memories. The atmosphere was heavy with grief, but wrapped in love until the front door swung open. The conversations immediately died down. My mother Valerie and my father Calvin walked through the door. They had not shed a single tear at the service. My mother was dressed in a custom black designer suit that looked more appropriate for a runway than a morning service. She wore a wide-brimmed hat and oversized sunglasses that she did not bother taking off indoors. My father trailed behind her, adjusting his expensive watch and looking around the house with a calculating gleam in his eye. They walked straight past the people who had actually loved Pops. Right behind them was my older sister Nia. Nia is 35 years old and has always been their golden child. She walked in holding a designer handbag that probably cost more than some people's cars. Following closely behind Nia was her husband Connor. Connor is a 36-year-old white financial broker who has always looked down on our family. He cares that is genuinely exhausting to witness. He has always spoken to me as if I were uneducated, completely unaware that I am the founder and chief executive officer of a highly successful financial technology company. I keep my wealth extremely quiet. I wear simple clothes, drive an older car, and prefer to let my success speak for itself. As the last few church members offered their condolences and quietly slipped out the front door, the true nature of my biological family was instantly put on display. The house had not even emptied completely before Connor pulled a metal measuring tape out of his pocket. I stood by the kitchen island holding a cup of hot tea, watching him in absolute disbelief. He did not offer me a word of comfort or ask how I was holding up. Instead, he walked right up to the wall separating the kitchen from the living room and stretched the metal tape across the drywall. "This wall definitely has to go," Connor announced loudly to Nia. His voice echoed in the quiet house. "If we knock this down, we can create a modern open-concept layout. It will maximize the resale value or make it a great investment property for our portfolio. We just need to check if it is load-bearing." Nia clapped her hands together, looking around the cozy living room with profound disgust. "I completely agree," she said. "This whole place is so outdated. It smells like old books and peppermint. We are going to have to gut the entire interior. But first I need to figure out the bedroom situation." I watched them plotting the destruction of my childhood home while my grandfather's scent still lingered in the air. My father Calvin was already in the kitchen opening the refrigerator and inspecting the appliances. "We can probably get a decent price for this stove," Calvin muttered to my mother. "It is stainless steel, so we should sell it before we bring the contractors in." Nia did not even wait for her husband to finish measuring the walls. She marched straight down the hallway toward my grandfather's master suite. That room was sacred to me. It held his vintage chessboard, his collection of jazz records, and the armchair where he used to read to me every night. I heard the door creak open and Nia let out a dramatic sigh of satisfaction. "Connor, come look at this!" Nia shouted from down the hall. "The square footage in here is actually decent. Once we throw out all this junk and rip up this terrible carpet, this space will be perfect. This master suite is going to be my new walk-in closet. We can use the guest room as our actual bedroom when we stay here during the renovations." I stood completely frozen by the cold marble counter. My blood boiled. My sister was treating my grandfather's sacred room like a cheap clearance sale item she had just scored. My mother Valerie walked over. She looked me up and down with absolute disgust and disdain. She slammed her expensive purse onto the granite countertop, narrowly missing the food I had spent hours preparing for the morning community. "The house is ours now," Valerie declared, her voice completely devoid of warmth. "Connor already spoke to a corporate real estate group. So stop standing around here looking so miserable. You need to pack your things right now. I expect you gone by tomorrow morning permanently." The polished glass doors of the downtown Atlanta law firm glide open with a soft mechanical hiss. I step into the expansive corporate boardroom, and the sheer arrogance in the room is instantly suffocating. Connor has spared absolutely no expense. He has hired Sterling and Vance, an aggressive team of corporate shark attorneys, known for bankrupting their opponents through endless litigation. The centerpiece of the room is a massive mahogany conference table that shines like glass. Sitting on the opposite side of that intimidating table is my biological family. They have completely recovered from the absolute humiliation I handed them at the church. Today, they are wearing their confidence like freshly pressed armor. Valerie sits perfectly upright, wearing a stark white designer suit and her signature pearl necklace. She looks like a queen who has just been informed her stolen throne is being returned. Calvin sits beside her, puffing out his chest and trying to mimic the aggressive posture of the two highly paid lawyers flanking him. Nia is practically bouncing in her leather executive chair, flashing me a look of pure, unadulterated triumph. And then there is Connor. Connor is leaning forward, resting his forearms on the mahogany table. He is trying to project absolute corporate dominance, but I can see the frantic, nervous energy radiating off him. He is tapping his expensive gold pen against the wood in a rapid, erratic rhythm. He needs this meeting to go his way because the 24-hour deadline I gave him at the church to repay his $2 million commercial loan is rapidly ticking down. Have a seat, Maya, the lead attorney, Sterling commands. He does not offer me a glass of water. He does not offer a polite greeting. He uses the sharp, condescending tone of a man who makes a living, bullying people into submission. I pull out one of the heavy leather chairs and sit down. I do not bring a lawyer of my own. I place my hands neatly on my lap and wait. Sterling reaches into a thick legal binder and pulls out a yellowed, heavily embossed document. He slides it across the smooth mahogany surface until it stops directly in front of me. We have uncovered a comprehensive last will and testament executed by your grandfather, Sterling, announces his voice echoing in the large room. This document was properly notarized and filed prior to the establishment of the trust you currently manage. It explicitly devises the entirety of the Jenkins Investment Group and all associated commercial and residential real estate holdings directly to his biological daughter, Valerie. I look down at the document without touching it. It is the decoy will. Sterling leans back in his chair, steepling his fingers. Your attempt to shield my client's rightful assets in a trust is legally precarious at best. We are prepared to tie this estate up in probate litigation for the next decade. We will freeze every single account. We will halt every property transaction. But that is not the worst of your problems, Maya. Given Marcus Jenkins' advanced age and declining health during his final years, we are fully prepared to file criminal charges against you. We have drafted a comprehensive lawsuit accusing you of elder abuse and financial manipulation. We will argue that you coerced a senile old man into signing over his generational wealth. Valerie nods enthusiastically at the lawyer's words. She looks at me with cold, dead eyes. You should have just packed your bags when I told you to. Valerie states, her voice dripping with malice. Now you are going to end up in a federal prison. I will make sure the judge knows exactly how you isolated my father and manipulated his failing mind. Calvin clears his throat, attempting to play the role of the benevolent patriarch offering mercy. We do not want to see you destroyed, Maya, Calvin says, placing a hand over his heart. We are not monsters. We are willing to offer you a graceful exit. Connor stops tapping his pen. He reaches into his blazer pocket and pulls out a certified cashier's check. He slides it across the table, dropping it right on top of the decoy will. It is a check made out to me for exactly $50,000. Take it, Maya, Connor sneers, his voice laced with desperate arrogance. It is $50,000. That is more money than you have ever seen in your entire life. Take the check and sign the relinquishment forms. Step down as the trustee. Hand over the legal rights to the Jenkins Investment Group and walk away today. If you refuse, we unleash the lawyers. We will drag your name through the mud. We will brand you an abuser of the elderly. You will spend the next 10 years drowning in legal fees, and you will end up bankrupt and behind bars. Nia laughs, a high-pitched, grating sound. Take the money and run, Maya. You are completely outmatched. Connor hired the best litigators in the state. You cannot possibly win this. I stare at the $50,000 check. They are trying to buy my grandfather's entire legacy for pennies. They are threatening me with criminal charges, trying to terrify me into surrendering the keys to the kingdom. I look at Valerie, who is practically salivating at the thought of inheriting the Jenkins Investment Group. I look at Connor, who is sweating through his expensive cologne, desperate to secure the corporate assets he needs to save himself from the financial ruin I just dropped on his head. I do not panic. I do not shout. I do not defend myself against the disgusting accusations of elder abuse. Instead, my mind drifts back to a rainy Tuesday afternoon 5 years ago. I am sitting in Grandpa's quiet study. The comforting scent of peppermint and old library books fills the air. Pops is sitting behind his desk, carefully signing the real, irrevocable trust documents. He looks up at me, his dark eyes sharp and brilliant. They will try to break this trust, Maya, Pops told me, his voice a low, gravelly rumble. When I am gone, they will hire expensive suits and make incredibly loud threats. They will try to bully you and they will try to frame you. But I have left a trap for them. I have left a decoy will in the old safe deposit box. It gives them exactly what they think they deserve. It gives them the Jenkins Investment Group. Pops leaned forward, resting his weathered hands on the desk. He smiled a slow, brilliant smile. When greed blinds them, Maya, give them exactly what they want. Let them think they have won. Let them celebrate their victory, but remind them that every crown carries a heavy weight. I blink, bringing my focus back to the cold mahogany boardroom. The four of them are staring at me, waiting for my spirit to break. They expect me to cry. They expect me to beg. They expect me to snatch that $50,000 check like a starving dog. I slowly reach out and pick up the golden pen resting next to the legal documents. I do not say a single word. I pull the relinquishment forms toward me. I place the tip of the pen against the signature line, and I prepare to give them exactly what they want. The heavy gold pen feels cold against my fingers. I do not let my hand tremble. I do not show a single ounce of hesitation. I press the nib against the thick parchment paper and trace my signature across the dotted line with absolute fluidity. The scratch of the ink across the page sounds like a firecracker in the dead silence. I sign my name a second time on the accompanying relinquishment waiver. Then I date it. I place the pen down gently. I slide the entire stack of legal papers across the polished wood directly towards Sterling. The high-powered corporate attorney snatches the documents with eager precision. He adjusts his glasses, scanning my signature to ensure every legal requirement is met. He flips to the second page, checking the dates and the notarization boxes. A slow, predatory smile spreads across his face. He looks up at Connor and gives a sharp, definitive nod. "It is done," Sterling announces, his voice echoing with absolute finality. "The relinquishment is legally binding. Maya Jenkins has officially stepped down as trustee regarding the assets outlined in this specific document. Full ownership of the Jenkins Investment Group and all associated commercial properties transfers immediately to Valerie and Calvin." The tension in the room shatters instantly. Connor lets out a massive, explosive breath of relief. He slumps back into his executive chair, wiping a sheen of sweat from his forehead. He actually believes he has just secured the corporate assets he desperately needs to save his failing investment fund from the bank. He thinks he has completely neutralized the threat I posed at the church. Valerie lets out a loud, theatrical shriek of joy. She throws her arms around Calvin, hugging him as if they have just won the lottery. "We did it, Calvin," she cries out, her voice ringing with pure, unadulterated greed. "My father's legacy is finally back where it belongs. We are getting everything." Calvin puffs out his chest, looking at me with a mixture of pity and arrogant superiority. "You made the right choice, Maya," Calvin says, using his best fake paternal tone. "This was always a battle you were going to lose. It is better to walk away with a little something than to end up in federal prison for manipulating an old man. You took the smart way out." I reach across the table and pick up the certified cashier's check for $50,000. I fold it neatly and slip it into the inner pocket of my tailored blazer. I do not say a word. I just let a small, serene smile touch the corners of my mouth. Nia sees my smile and immediately misinterprets it as a mask for my crushing defeat. She stands up from her chair, practically vibrating with malicious excitement. "You are such a loser," Nia sneers, pointing a manicured finger at me. "You really thought you could outsmart us. You thought you could hide behind some fake legal trust and steal my inheritance. Look at you now. You are walking out of here with absolute pennies while Mom and Dad take over a multi-million-dollar empire. You are going right back to your pathetic wage worker life." Connor sits up straight, adjusting his expensive suit jacket. His arrogant swagger has completely returned. He snaps his fingers at one of the junior legal assistants standing by the door. "Bring it in," Connor commands, his voice dripping with authority. The assistant nods and quickly leaves the room, returning seconds later, pushing a silver rolling cart. Sitting on a bed of crushed ice are 2 bottles of premium vintage champagne and a set of crystal flutes. Connor planned this. He was so confident in his ability to bully me into submission that he pre-ordered celebratory champagne for the boardroom. Pop! The cork flies off the first bottle, hitting the high ceiling and bouncing onto the expensive carpet. Connor pours the bubbling golden liquid into the crystal flutes, handing them out to his wife and his in-laws. Sterling and his legal team politely decline the alcohol, but watch the family spectacle with amused detachment. "A toast," Connor announces, raising his glass high into the air. He looks directly at me, his eyes flashing with cruel, triumphant mockery. "To Valerie and Calvin, the rightful owners of the Jenkins Investment Group. And to Maya, who finally learned her place in the corporate food chain. Cheers." Valerie, Nia, and Calvin raise their glasses, clinking the crystal together with loud, obnoxious cheers. They take deep, greedy gulps of the champagne, celebrating the theft of my grandfather's legacy right in front of my face. They are completely intoxicated by their own perceived brilliance. I slowly stand up from my leather chair. I smooth out the front of my charcoal suit. I pick up my sleek black briefcase from the floor and place it on the table. I deliberately take my time snapping the latches shut. Every movement I make is calm, measured, and entirely unbothered by their childish display of dominance. Enjoy the money, Maya, Valerie calls out, taking another sip of her champagne. Maybe you can use it to go back to school and get a real degree. Or maybe you can use it to pay for therapy, so you can finally get over your petty jealousy of your sister. We are going to be very busy managing a corporate empire, so do not expect us to answer your calls when that 50,000 runs out. Nia laughs, leaning her head against Connor's shoulder. She is probably going to blow it all in a month, Nia mocks loudly. She has no idea how to manage real wealth. She is just a bitter, lonely woman who got lucky for a few days. Bye, Maya. Do not let the door hit you on the way out. I grab the handle of my briefcase. I do not defend myself. I do not hurl insults back at them. I stand there and I watch them drink their expensive champagne. I watch Connor basking in his false victory. I watch Valerie and Calvin acting like they have conquered the world. I watch them swallow the bait hook, line, and sinker. They are reveling in their newfound power, completely oblivious to the fact that they have just signed their own financial death warrants. They think they have stolen a crown, but they have absolutely no idea that the crown is made of lead, and they are standing in the middle of a very deep ocean. I turn my back to the table and slip my arms into my tailored wool coat. I fasten the large buttons with slow, deliberate movements. Behind me, the disgusting sounds of their premature victory continue to echo. Nia lets out another loud, grating laugh, making some derogatory comment about how I will probably have to take the bus home now that I am practically destitute. Calvin loudly asks Connor if they should use the $50,000 they just saved by getting rid of me to book a luxury cruise to the Bahamas. I do not let their bitter words penetrate my peace. I simply secure the strap of my briefcase over my shoulder and begin my walk toward the heavy double-glass doors of the boardroom. My heels strike the polished marble floor in a steady, rhythmic beat. Every step I take is a step away from a lifetime of emotional manipulation. I reach the doorway and wrap my hand around the cool stainless steel handle. I can feel the eyes of Sterling and his junior associates on me, waiting for me to exit, so they can close the file and bill Connor for a successful corporate acquisition. But I do not push the door open. I stop. I let a few seconds of heavy silence build before I slowly turn around to face the room one last time. The celebration stumbles slightly at my sudden pause. Valerie lowers her crystal flute, her perfectly shaped eyebrows pinching together in irritation. Connor crosses his arms, looking at me with a mixture of annoyance and superiority. He thinks I am about to deliver a tearful parting speech. He thinks I am going to beg for a relationship with the family that just robbed me blind. Congratulations, Mom. I say, my voice carrying a smooth, lethal calm that instantly drops the temperature in the room by 10 degrees. You are now the legal owner of the Jenkins Investment Group. I hope it brings you exactly the kind of happiness you deserve. Valerie sneers, raising her chin defiantly. Oh, it will, Maya. Trust me, it is going to bring us everything we have ever wanted. I let a slow, razor-sharp smile spread across my face. I shift my gaze away from my mother and lock eyes directly with Connor and his high-powered attorney. I certainly hope so. I continue, my tone dropping into a deadly serious corporate register. Because I assume Connor's highly paid lawyers read the fine print in the second appendix regarding attached debt liabilities. The word liabilities hangs in the air like a live grenade. The clinking of the champagne glasses stops instantly. The triumphant smiles slide right off their faces. Connor uncrosses his arms, his posture suddenly rigid with a creeping sense of dread. Sterling, the legal shark who was just smirking at my departure, suddenly goes completely still. What are you talking about? Connor demands, his voice tight and defensive. You signed away the assets. We have the clean title. You signed away your rights as the trustee to the holding company. I reply, keeping my voice perfectly steady. You wanted the corporate entity, and now you have it entirely. But acquiring a corporate entity means acquiring its entire balance sheet. Assets and debts, Connor. You cannot take one without the other. Sterling abandons his professional detachment entirely. He lunges across the mahogany table, grabbing the thick legal binder he had so arrogantly shoved in my face 20 minutes ago. His fingers frantically flip through the pages, tearing at the thick parchment paper as he searches for the appendix I just referenced. Connor steps forward, the color rapidly draining from his face as he watches his lead attorney unravel. What debt? Connor barks, his voice cracking slightly. We audited the public filings. The Jenkins Investment Group owns the house and the commercial lots free and clear. There are no mortgages. There are no public liens. I laugh, a cold, dry sound that makes my father Calvin flinch in his leather chair. You audited the public filings, Connor, I state, mocking his absolute lack of genuine diligence. You really should have audited the private commercial promissory notes. The Jenkins Investment Group has not been solvent for 5 years. My grandfather was a brilliant man. He knew you vultures would circle the moment his health failed, so he legally restructured everything to ensure that anyone who tried to steal his legacy would inherit a financial death sentence instead. Sterling stops, flipping pages. He stares down at a specific clause buried deep within the relinquishment waiver and the attached corporate charter. He goes completely pale. He looks up at Connor with an expression of pure, unfiltered panic. Oh my God. Sterling whispers the words escaping his lips before he can stop himself. What is it? Connor shouts, slamming his hands down on the table. Tell me what it says right now. Sterling swallows hard, adjusting his glasses with a trembling hand. The Jenkins Investment Group is heavily leveraged. He reads, his voice devoid of all previous arrogance. It appears they executed a private commercial bond agreement. The company is currently carrying a massive corporate debt obligation owed to an external holding firm. And because you utilized your personal investment fund to expedite the collateral transfer today, Connor, you have legally bound yourself to the repayment terms. Nia drops her champagne flute. The crystal shatters against the expensive boardroom carpet, sending golden liquid splashing across Valerie's white designer shoes. Nia does not even notice the mess. She stares at her husband in absolute horror. Connor, what does that mean? Nia cries out, grabbing his arm. What debt are they talking about? I do not stay to explain the horrific details to them. I do not stay to watch them desperately try to unspool the ironclad legal trap they just eagerly locked themselves into. I have delivered the message, and the poison is already working its way through their system. I push the heavy glass doors open and step out into the quiet carpeted corridor of the law firm. Wait! Maya Connor screams from inside the boardroom, his voice echoing with raw, unadulterated terror. Maya, get back here. You cannot do this. We will cancel the signature. We will void the contract. I do not turn back. I walk down the long hallway, my head held high, my shoulders relaxed and light. Behind me, I can hear the absolute chaos erupting inside the room. I hear Valerie sobbing, demanding that Calvin fix the situation. I hear Nia shrieking at Connor. I hear the sound of heavy chairs scraping violently against the floorboards as they scramble to figure out how to save themselves from a catastrophe of their own making. I reach the end of the corridor and press the glowing button for the elevator. The silver doors slide open instantly. I step inside, turning around to face the hallway just as Connor bursts out of the boardroom doors, sprinting toward me with a look of pure panicked desperation. He is shouting my name, threatening to sue me, begging me to stop. I look right at him. I press the button for the lobby. The elevator doors glide shut, cutting off his frantic screaming and leaving me in absolute beautiful silence. The trap has been sprung and they are entirely to blame. Exactly 24 hours later, the first domino falls. I am sitting in my private executive suite at Apex Holdings, watching the digital dashboard on my monitor. The automated financial clearing systems do not care about family ties or empty apologies. They only care about cold, hard numbers. And the numbers attached to my biological family have just turned a violent, blinding shade of red. Valerie and Calvin could not even wait a full day to celebrate their stolen inheritance. The ink was barely dry on the relinquishment forms before my mother decided it was time to flaunt her new corporate wealth. She drags my father to the most exclusive luxury boutique in the heart of Buckhead, Atlanta. She wants everyone in the store to know she has arrived. She demands personal service, sipping complimentary sparkling water, while she points a manicured finger at thousands of dollars worth of designer handbags, shoes, and silk garments. She carries herself with the haughty arrogance of a woman who believes she has just outsmarted the entire world. She approaches the polished glass checkout counter and slides the brand new corporate credit card across the surface. This is the card Sterling provided to her, the one attached to the Jenkins Investment Group. The cashier smiles politely and swipes the plastic. The machine processes the request for a split second before emitting a loud, harsh beep of absolute rejection. Declined. Valerie scoffs loudly, rolling her eyes at the cashier. She claims their system must be broken. She dramatically opens her purse and pulls out her personal platinum card, slapping it onto the counter. The cashier runs it again. Another sharp beep. Declined. Valerie loses her temper. She demands the manager. She screams that she is a wealthy woman and this is completely unacceptable. Calvin rushes forward to save face, pulling out his own debit cards and credit lines. He swipes them one by one. Every single transaction comes back rejected. The manager quietly suggests they contact their bank. Calvin steps away with his cell phone, his hands trembling slightly. When the bank representative answers, Calvin demands to know why a block has been placed on their accounts. The representative informs him that it is not a temporary block. It is a total federal freeze. A massive commercial lien has been triggered against their names and all associated Social Security numbers. Because they gleefully signed the paperwork to inherit the Jenkins Investment Group, they legally absorbed a $15 million corporate debt obligation. The bank has immediately locked every single asset they own to prevent capital flight. Valerie and Calvin are escorted out of the boutique by security, empty-handed and entirely disgraced. They stand on the busy sidewalk, completely paralyzed by the sudden evaporation of their entire reality. Across town, the situation is unfolding with even more explosive violence. Connor is sitting inside his glass-enclosed office at his boutique investment firm. He has been sweating through his expensive shirt since yesterday, trying frantically to find a legal loophole to undo the nightmare he signed his name to. But corporate automated systems do not wait for injunctions or legal maneuvering. They operate with ruthless mathematical efficiency. The phone on his desk rings. It is his senior compliance officer calling from the floor below. The panic in the man's voice is absolute. The central clearing banks have just flagged Connor's entire investment fund. Because Connor arrogantly used his personal and professional assets as collateral to expedite the transfer of the Jenkins estate, he tied his firm directly to that $15 million toxic debt. The algorithms instantly detect the massive liability discrepancy. Connor's prime brokers immediately suspend his lines of credit. His corporate trading accounts are frozen, locking him out of the market entirely. The compliance officer informs Connor that the Securities and Exchange Commission has been automatically notified of the sudden catastrophic liquidity crisis. Automated emails are already being dispatched to Connor's wealthy clients, informing them that withdrawals from the fund are temporarily halted. Connor drops the phone. He stares at the flashing red warning screens on his multiple monitors. He realizes his career, his reputation, and his freedom are completely disintegrating right in front of his eyes. He grabs his keyboard and violently hurls it across the room, shattering a glass partition. At the exact same moment, Nia is sitting at a high society brunch in a trendy downtown restaurant. She has invited 5 of her most superficial friends to celebrate her new status as a corporate heiress. She orders expensive champagne and imported caviar, laughing loudly and bragging about the massive estate she just secured. When the waiter brings the check, Nia eagerly volunteers to pay, wanting to show off her limitless wealth. She hands over her credit card. The waiter returns 2 minutes later, looking deeply uncomfortable. He quietly informs her that the card was declined. Nia turns bright red. She tries 3 different cards, all declined. She excuses herself to the restroom and calls Connor. Connor answers the phone, screaming at the top of his lungs. He tells his wife that they are completely ruined. He screams that her mother just dragged them into a $15 million death trap and his entire firm is collapsing. Nia drops her phone onto the bathroom tiles, the screen shattering upon impact. She is left standing there, realizing she cannot even afford to pay for her own brunch. The family descends into a state of utter hysteria. Connor frantically dials Sterling, the corporate shark attorney, who promised him a clean acquisition. The phone rings and rings until the receptionist finally answers. Connor demands to speak to Sterling immediately. The receptionist informs him in a cold, detached tone that Sterling is completely unavailable. The law firm has realized that Connor hid his massive financial instability when retaining their services. By dragging them into this toxic acquisition, Connor has made himself a catastrophic liability. Sterling is washing his hands of them. The law firm drops Connor as a client, effective immediately refusing to take any part in the impending financial investigation. They are entirely on their own. I sit in my chair taking a slow sip of my coffee. My personal cell phone begins to ring. I watch the screen light up. The caller ID displays Valerie's name. The phone rings until it goes to voicemail. 2 seconds later it rings again, displaying Calvin's name. Then Nia's. Then Connor calling from an unknown number. The onslaught of calls is desperate and relentless. They are trapped in a burning building of their own making, and they are finally realizing that I am the only person holding the key to the exit. I do not answer a single call. I simply turn my phone face down on the desk and listen to the beautiful, quiet hum of my office. The financial dominoes have officially fallen, and there is absolutely nothing they can do to stop the crash. Connor stands behind his shattered glass partition, clutching his cell phone to his ear with white-knuckled desperation. He has spent the last 2 hours calling every financial contact, every favor, every backdoor auditor he knows in the greater Atlanta area. His bespoke suit is completely soaked with sweat. Finally, a high-tier forensic accountant named Vance answers the line. Vance is a man who specializes in unraveling complex corporate bankruptcies, and he does not mince words. Connor puts the phone on speaker and slams it onto his desk so Nia, Valerie, and Calvin can hear the verdict. They have rushed to his office seeking a miracle, but they are about to receive a death sentence. "Look at the property deeds!" Connor barks at the speakerphone, his voice hoarse and frantic. "Pull the municipal tax records for the Jenkins Investment Group. There has to be a mistake. The bank is saying the company is in default, but Valerie just inherited an empire. The house, the commercial lots, the downtown properties. Tell me they are still there, Vance. Tell me the assets are secured." The sound of rapid typing echoes through the speakerphone. Vance is pulling up the federal and state corporate registries. The silence stretches out for 30 agonizing seconds. Valerie grips Calvin's arm, her perfectly manicured nails digging into his sleeve. Nia is biting her lip so hard it is practically bleeding. They are waiting for the forensic accountant to tell them that Maya was lying, that this is all just a temporary computer glitch that can be fixed with a few signatures. The typing stops. Vance lets out a long, heavy breath. Connor Vance says, his voice completely devoid of any comfort or pity. "I am looking at the historical ledger for the Jenkins Investment Group right now. I do not know who told you this company was solvent, but you have been completely blinded. There are no assets here. There are no commercial lots. There is no residential property. You are holding the deed to a hollowed-out carcass." Valerie lunges toward the desk, leaning over the speakerphone. "That is impossible!" she screams, her voice cracking with pure hysteria. "My father owned that brick house for 40 years. He owned the entire commercial block on 4th Street. I saw the original deeds. He was an old man with a failing mind. Maya must have forged the transfer documents. Tell the bank he was senile. Tell them it was elder abuse." Mrs. Jenkins Vance replies, his tone dropping into a cold clinical register. "Your father was not senile. In fact, looking at this corporate structuring, I would say he was one of the most brilliant strategic minds I have ever seen on paper. He executed this financial maneuver exactly 5 years ago. He knew exactly what he was doing. He anticipated a hostile takeover of his estate. He saw the vultures circling his legacy, so he built an impenetrable fortress. And he attached a flawless medical competency evaluation to every single bill of sale. He had 3 separate board-certified neurologists, sign affidavits confirming his absolute mental clarity on the exact day he restructured his portfolio. There is no judge in the United States who would overturn these contracts. Connor grabs the edges of his desk, his knuckles turning white. Restructured. Connor chokes out the word, feeling the room spinning around him. What do you mean restructured, Vance? Where did the properties go? Vance sighs the sound, amplifying the absolute doom settling over the room. 5 years ago, Marcus Jenkins systematically liquidated every single tangible asset held under the Jenkins Investment Group. Vance explains, outlining the meticulous trap. He sold the brick house. He sold the commercial lots. He sold the investment portfolios. He legally and permanently transferred the titles away from his own company. He emptied the vault completely. The Jenkins Investment Group that you just eagerly inherited is nothing but a shell company. It is a ghost ship floating on a sea of red ink. It produces no revenue. It holds no equity. It exists solely as a vessel to carry debt. Calvin stumbles backward, hitting the office wall. He slides down until he is sitting on the floor, his hands gripping his thinning hair. A shell company. Calvin whispers, the realization finally penetrating his thick skull. We signed a relinquishment waiver for a shell company. Who bought the assets? Connor demands, his voice rising to a frantic, desperate shout. Who did he sell them to? If he liquidated the properties, where did the cash go? We can track the cash, Vance. We can sue the buyer for fraudulent conveyance. Find out who bought the real estate. I already have, Vance replies, his keystrokes echoing sharply through the phone. The buyer was a massive financial technology corporation, a private equity titan that specializes in real estate acquisitions and trust management. They paid fair market value for every single piece of property Marcus Jenkins owned. They wired the funds directly into an offshore irrevocable trust that you have absolutely no legal authority to access. But the corporation did not stop there. Vance pauses, letting the silence build the tension to an unbearable breaking point. They also issued a massive commercial loan back to the Jenkins Investment Group. Vance continues delivering the final fatal blow. After buying all the assets, this corporation loaned the now empty Jenkins Investment Group $15 million in unsecured commercial debt. Your grandfather took that cash and locked it inside the trust. The debt remained attached to the shell company. When Valerie signed the inheritance papers today, she legally assumed personal responsibility for that $15 million commercial liability. And Connor, because you used your investment firm to guarantee the transfer to bypass the probate waiting period, you co-signed the poison pill. Nia lets out a blood-curdling scream. She grabs her designer handbag and throws it violently against the glass wall. We are ruined, she shrieks, completely losing her mind. We are utterly ruined. Connor stares at the speakerphone, his eyes wide and vacant. The sheer magnitude of his own arrogance has finally crushed him. He thought he was outsmarting a local wage worker. He thought he was stealing a neighborhood real estate portfolio. He never once considered that he was walking blindly into a highly sophisticated corporate bear trap designed by a man who saw right through his greedy soul. What is the name of the corporation? Connor whispers, his voice completely hollowed out. What is the name of the company holding our debt, Vance? Vance types one final sequence of keys. The holding firm is called Apex Holdings. Vance states, reading the name off the Federal Registry. It is a highly aggressive, privately held fintech empire. And Connor, they have already filed the default notices against your name. They are moving to liquidate you entirely. They are going to take everything you own. Vance severs the connection. The dial tone hums through the speakerphone for exactly 3 seconds before Connor violently slams his fist down on the keypad to end the call. The silence that follows is thick enough to choke on. The reality of the fatal error they just committed begins to crush them like a physical weight in the room. This was not a banking error. This was a meticulously executed legal execution, and they eagerly tied the noose around their own necks. Connor stares blindly at the shattered glass on his office floor. His mind races backward frantically, replaying the events in the mahogany boardroom just 24 hours ago. He realizes exactly how his own blinding hubris sealed their fate. Standard corporate acquisitions and probate transfers require a mandatory 30-day discovery period. During that window, lawyers audit liabilities, check for hidden liens, and ensure the asset is actually solvent before the final signatures are recorded. But Connor did not want to wait 30 days. He was desperate. His own investment fund was bleeding cash, and he needed to leverage the Jenkins estate immediately to satisfy his angry creditors. So he played the role of the aggressive corporate shark. He demanded an expedited transfer. To bypass the legal waiting period, Connor voluntarily put up his own personal investment fund and his professional trading accounts as a bridge guarantee. He legally certified that he would underwrite the acquisition. He was so incredibly eager to steal a dead man's legacy that he handed the bank the keys to his entire career just to speed up the process. And Valerie and Calvin were right there beside him, consumed by their own bottomless greed. They were so desperate to snatch my grandfather's wealth that they did not bother to hire independent financial counsel. They did not read page 42 of the relinquishment waiver. They blindly signed the primary assumption of liabilities clause, assuming it was just standard boilerplate legal jargon. By eagerly signing those inheritance papers, Valerie and Calvin legally absorbed the shell company's $15 million commercial debt. They tied that massive liability directly to their own Social Security numbers. They offered up their own home, their cars, and their retirement accounts as collateral for a ghost ship. The united front of my toxic biological family instantly shatters. There is no more loyalty. There is only raw, animalistic self-preservation. Nia flies across the room, grabbing Connor by the lapels of his ruined tailored suit. "You fix this," Nia screams, her voice tearing at her throat. "You are a financial broker. You fix this right now, Connor. You told me we were rich. You told me we were getting millions." Connor shoves his wife away so hard she stumbles backward into Calvin. "Shut up," Connor roars, his face twisted into an ugly mask of sheer panic. "I am ruined because of your family. Your mother handed me a ticking time bomb. I put my firm on the line for this. I put my entire license on the line to secure your mother's fake empire. I am going to federal prison because of your useless dead grandfather." Valerie lets out a high-pitched wail of pure terror. She grabs her designer purse, completely ignoring the fact that her daughter was just shoved. "We have to call the police," Valerie cries out, pacing the floor like a trapped rat. "We have to tell the authorities that Maya set us up. Maya knew about the debt. She handed us the paperwork. This is extortion. We can have her arrested." Connor stops pacing. His eyes widen as Valerie's frantic words spark a desperate idea in his failing mind. Maya. Maya was the trustee. She had to know who bought the properties 5 years ago. She had to know who controls Apex Holdings. In his twisted, arrogant logic, Connor convinces himself that I am just a low-level pawn. He thinks I am a naive wage worker who accidentally stumbled into a massive corporate conspiracy. He thinks if he can just terrify me into testifying against Apex Holdings, he can prove the debt was a fraudulent setup and save his own skin. Connor lunges across his desk and grabs his cell phone. His hands are shaking so violently, he drops the device twice before finally dialing my number. I am sitting in the absolute tranquility of my corner office at Apex Holdings. The view of the Atlanta skyline is crystal clear today. My desk is immaculate. I am sipping a fresh cup of green tea. My personal cell phone begins to ring. The caller identification flashes Connor's name. I let it ring 3 times. I want him to sweat. I want his heart rate to peak. On the 4th ring, I calmly press the green button and bring the phone to my ear. I do not say hello. I just listen to him breathe. "Maya, you listen to me right now," Connor screams into the receiver, his voice completely unhinged. "You are in so much trouble. You are in over your head, and you are going to go to prison if you do not cooperate with me immediately." I take a slow sip of my tea. My voice is perfectly smooth, completely devoid of any emotion. "Hello, Connor. Having a bad day at the office." "Do not play games with me, you stupid girl," Connor bellows. "I know exactly what you did. I know about the shell company. I know you signed over a $15 million debt. That is criminal fraud. I am calling the Securities and Exchange Commission. I am calling the FBI. I am going to sue Apex Holdings into the ground. I will tear that corporation apart piece by piece until they cancel this debt." "You are going to sue Apex Holdings?" I ask, leaning back in my plush leather chair. "On what grounds, Connor? You demanded an expedited transfer. You refused a discovery period. You signed the bridge guarantee with your own hand. Apex Holdings did not defraud you. You defrauded yourself. You set us up! Connor screeches, the sound of his fist slamming against his desk, echoing through the phone. You and that senile old man orchestrated a financial trap. I want to name Maya. I am not playing around anymore. You are going to tell me exactly who is running that company, who bought the real estate, who owns the debt. Tell me the name of the CEO of Apex Holdings right now, or I swear to God I will send the police to your door. He is panting heavily, his breath rasping through the speaker. He is clinging to the desperate hope that he can intimidate the CEO of this massive corporation the same way he tries to intimidate his wife. He wants a name to put on his lawsuits. He wants a target for his rage. He has absolutely no idea that the target is the woman currently holding the phone. I lean back in my high-backed Italian leather chair, allowing the ambient silence of my penthouse office to wash over me. The floor-to-ceiling windows offer a panoramic view of the Atlanta skyline, a sprawling concrete and glass kingdom that I have conquered completely under the radar. My phone continues to vibrate aggressively against the polished mahogany desk. The caller identification flashes Connor's name over and over again. I take a slow, deliberate breath. I reach out and tap the green button, sliding the phone across the smooth wooden surface to activate the speakerphone. I do not offer a polite greeting. I do not say a single word. I simply listen to the raw, panicked breathing echoing on the other end of the line. Maya, you listen to me right now. Connor screams, his voice tearing through the small speaker with absolute unrestrained hysteria. You are in so much trouble. You are in way over your head, and you are going to go to federal prison if you do not cooperate with me immediately. You tell me who runs that company right now. I pick up my fine porcelain teacup and take a small, measured sip of Earl Grey. I let the warm liquid soothe my throat, taking my time before I finally decide to end his miserable corporate existence. My voice is perfectly smooth, completely devoid of any emotion or sympathetic hesitation. You went to business school, Connor. I say, my words cutting through his frantic screaming like a surgical scalpel. You parade around the city with your fancy degrees and your expensive tailored suits, acting like you are the smartest man in every single room you enter. You constantly brag about your elite market strategies and your flawless financial instincts. You should know how to do a simple corporate background check. Open Google. Search for the CEO of Apex Holdings. The line goes dead quiet. The only sound filtering through the speaker is the heavy, ragged intake of Connor's terrified breath. I can hear the frantic clicking of his mechanical keyboard in the background. He is typing with violently trembling fingers. He is pulling up the federal business registries, the financial news outlets, the corporate executive databases. He is desperately searching the internet for the faceless ghost that just annihilated his entire professional career. I wait patiently, letting the seconds tick by. I want to hear the exact moment his fabricated reality shatters into a million irreparable pieces. The frantic typing stops. A suffocating vacuum of silence stretches across the phone line. I can almost see the pale reflection of the computer monitor illuminating his horrified face. I can vividly picture his eyes darting across the screen, reading the bold black print of the executive profile staring back at him. No, Connor whispers, his voice cracking, completely stripped of its usual arrogant bass. No, that is impossible. The corporate records are forged. You are a low-wage worker. You serve coffee. You live in a rundown house. You do not own a massive private equity firm. You saw exactly what you wanted to see. Connor, I reply, leaning forward and resting my elbows on my immaculate desk. You looked at a young black woman, and you automatically assumed incompetence. You assumed poverty. You assumed I was a helpless victim waiting to be stepped on by your superior intellect. You never once bothered to look past your own blinding racial and social prejudice to see the massive empire I was quietly building right under your arrogant nose. I stand up from my leather chair and walk slowly toward the glass windows, looking down at the bustling city traffic far below. Apex Holdings is my company, Connor. I built it from the absolute ground up over the last decade. While you were busy financing your luxury lifestyle with high-interest debt and bragging to my parents about your mediocre portfolio, I was quietly acquiring commercial real estate across 3 different states. I was developing complex financial technology platforms that process billions of dollars in daily corporate transactions. I am the sole founder. I am the majority shareholder, and I am the chief executive officer. A strangled, gasping sound escapes the phone speaker. It sounds like Connor is physically choking on the recycled air inside his glass office. You bought the Jenkins estate. He stammers, his brain finally connecting the fatal dots of the legal trap. You bought your own grandfather's properties. I bought everything. I confirm, my voice ringing with absolute chilling authority in the quiet room. Pops came to me 5 years ago when his health first started to decline. He knew exactly what Valerie and Calvin would do the second he passed away. He knew they would bring you and Nia into the fold to carve up his lifelong legacy like hungry vultures. So we sat down together and we built an impenetrable fortress. I legally purchased every single tangible asset he owned at fair market value. I wired the funds directly into his offshore irrevocable trust. And then my corporation Apex Holdings issued a massive $15 million commercial loan back to the empty shell company he left behind. You set a trap, Connor shouts, finding a brief fleeting spark of unhinged rage. You orchestrated a massive financial fraud to ruin us. I will sue you, Maya. I will have you disbarred and imprisoned for deceptive business practices. I laugh, a cold, dry sound that holds absolutely zero amusement. Sue me for what exactly, Connor? For giving you exactly what you aggressively demanded. You are the one who marched into my grandfather's house with a measuring tape on the very day of his funeral. You are the one who hired corporate sharks to freeze the estate. You are the one who aggressively demanded an expedited transfer to bypass the standard legal waiting period. You voluntarily waived your right to a 30-day discovery audit because you were so incredibly desperate to get your hands on my grandfather's money. I walk back to my desk and tap my manicured fingernail against the polished wood. Nobody forced you to sign that bridge guarantee, Connor. Nobody forced Valerie to sign the primary assumption of liabilities clause in that boardroom. You did it entirely voluntarily. You eagerly absorbed a $15 million toxic debt because your boundless greed made you exceptionally careless. You thought you were stealing a valuable crown, but you eagerly strapped a concrete block to your own ankles and threw yourself directly into the deepest part of the ocean. Please, Connor begs, his voice suddenly breaking into a pathetic, whimpering sob that strips away his last shred of dignity. Maya, please, you have to cancel the debt. My prime brokers have frozen my corporate trading accounts. The Securities and Exchange Commission is initiating a severe liquidity audit right now. I am going to lose my firm. I am going to lose my broker license. I will lose everything I have ever worked for. I stare at the phone, feeling absolutely no pity for the broken man weeping on the other end of the line. You have already lost everything, Connor, I state, delivering the final devastating blow. My collection agents filed the official default notices with the federal clearing banks exactly 20 minutes ago. Because you eagerly used your personal and professional assets to underwrite the rapid transfer, Apex Holdings now has the absolute legal right to liquidate your entire portfolio to satisfy the outstanding debt. We are legally seizing your firm. We are seizing your bank accounts. And once we finish draining your professional assets, we are coming straight for your house and your luxury cars. Maya, I am begging you, Connor cries out, the sound of a man completely destroyed by his own monumental hubris. You should have brought a lawyer, Connor, I say, smoothly repeating the exact warning I gave him on the front porch of my grandfather's house just days ago. I press the red button on the screen, instantly disconnecting the call. The office is plunged back into a beautiful, serene silence. I pick up my teacup and take another slow, deliberate sip. The game is officially over, and I have just checkmated my entire toxic family without breaking a single sweat. Across the city, in that shattered glass office, the reality of my final words forces Connor to do exactly what I instructed. His trembling fingers clumsily hammer the keys on his mechanical keyboard, typing the name of my corporation into the search engine. Valerie, Calvin, and Nia crowd around the glowing monitor, their breaths catching in their dry throats as they wait for the results. The page loads with a crisp, modern interface. The official corporate website of Apex Holdings fills the entire screen, displaying an interactive map of our global real estate acquisitions. Connor, frantic and sweating, clicks directly on the Executive Leadership tab. There, on the very top of the page, is a high-resolution portrait of me. I am wearing a sharp, tailored suit, looking directly into the camera with absolute, unwavering confidence. Below my photograph, the bold black text reads, Maya Jenkins, founder and chief executive officer. For years, they called me an ugly failure. They called me a wage worker, a spinster, a pathetic outcast who lived off the charity of a dying old man. They convinced themselves and everyone around them that I was absolutely nothing. Meanwhile, I was out in the real world, building a multi-million-dollar financial technology empire. I was developing proprietary algorithms that process commercial transactions for Tier 1 banks. I was acquiring prime commercial real estate across the East Coast, utilizing data models my firm built from scratch. I was accumulating a level of generational wealth that made Connor's boutique investment fund look like a child's plastic piggy bank. And I did it all entirely in the shadows, letting their blinding racial and social prejudice serve as my absolute best camouflage. They never saw me coming because they never believed a black woman from a broken home could ever outsmart them. Grandpa Pops and I orchestrated this trap to absolute perfection. He was the only person in the family who truly saw me for who I was. When my business first took off, he did not ask for a handout. He asked for a partnership. He knew his biological daughter and her greedy husband were just waiting for his heart to stop beating so they could aggressively carve up his estate. He refused to let the legacy he built with his own two hands be squandered by a family of selfish parasites. We sat in his study, drinking sweet tea, playing chess, and building a financial fortress. He legally sold his assets to my corporation at fair market value, and we planted the massive $15 million poison pill right inside the empty shell company. We knew their boundless greed would completely blind them to the trap. We knew they would arrogantly demand to bypass the standard 30-day legal discovery period. We just handed them the rope and they eagerly tied the knot around their own necks. The fallout hits them with devastating absolute force. Karma does not just knock on their doors, it kicks them completely off their hinges. Connor is the first to fall. His panicked, desperate attempts to salvage his firm fail miserably. The automated financial clearing systems lock him out permanently. Within 48 hours, the Securities and Exchange Commission formally suspends his broker's license, pending a massive fraud investigation into his unauthorized leveraging of client accounts. The board of directors at his own firm votes unanimously to terminate him for severe financial negligence. He is escorted out of his own high-rise building by armed security, carrying his personal belongings in a single cardboard box, while his former employees watch in disgusted silence. Faced with complete financial annihilation, Connor does the only thing a coward knows how to do. He runs. He immediately files for corporate bankruptcy and simultaneously serves Nia with divorce papers. He tries to legally sever himself from the toxic debt she just inherited, claiming she and her family intentionally defrauded him into signing the bridge guarantee. Nia is left completely abandoned in the smoking wreckage of her own arrogance. The luxury lifestyle she endlessly rubbed in my face evaporates overnight. Without Connor's massive income to fund her exorbitant credit card bills, the collection agencies descend like locusts. Her designer clothes, her diamond tennis bracelets, her leased luxury vehicles are all swiftly repossessed. She receives a formal eviction notice for her high-rise penthouse apartment pinned directly to her door by a county sheriff. The high society friends she so desperately tried to impress instantly block her phone number, wanting absolutely nothing to do with a broke, disgraced socialite drowning in corporate debt. Nia is forced to pack whatever cheap clothes she has left into black garbage bags and move into a run-down motel completely alone and facing $15 million of commercial liability. But the most poetic justice is reserved for Valerie and Calvin, the mother who shoved $20 in my hand and abandoned me at an airport, the father who enabled her every cruel whim and covered up her financial thefts. When they proudly and eagerly signed the relinquishment waiver to inherit the Jenkins investment group, They legally pledged their own personal assets as collateral against the shell company's massive liabilities. The bank executes the commercial liens with ruthless mechanical efficiency. The foreclosure notices are taped directly to the front door of their pristine suburban house. The exact same house they remortgaged multiple times to fund their fake luxury lifestyle and country club memberships. The bank seizes the property, changing the locks and freezing their retirement accounts to satisfy the outstanding corporate debt. They are left with absolutely nothing. No home, no savings, no retirement funds. The community at the Greater Hope Fellowship completely turns its back on them. The church mothers who once listened to Valerie's theatrical tears now cross the street to avoid walking on the same side as a woman who tried to steal from her own father and publicly lied in the house of the Lord. They are social pariahs stripped of the fake respectability they valued above all else. They thought they were outsmarting the legal system. They thought they were finally getting the massive, effortless payday they deserved for doing absolutely nothing. Instead, they willingly signed away their entire future, chasing a crown that was designed specifically to crush them. The sky breaks open just as the reality of their complete financial annihilation sets in. A torrential downpour crashes down on the city of Atlanta, washing away the last remnants of the oppressive summer heat. I am standing in the grand foyer of my private estate, adjusting the cuffs of my silk blouse. My property sits on 10 acres of pristine woodland, shielded from the main road by massive wrought iron security gates and a state-of-the-art surveillance system. The rain hammers against the high arched windows of my home, creating a rhythmic drumming sound that feels incredibly peaceful. The intercom mounted on the marble wall next to the front door buzzes with an urgent grating tone. My security detail monitoring the perimeter cameras from the gatehouse patches the audio feed directly into the foyer. "Maya, please answer the intercom!" Valerie screams, her voice distorted by the heavy rain and the electronic speaker. "Please, Maya, we know you are in there. You have to talk to us. You have to let us in." I walk over to the security monitor and tap the screen to activate the live video feed. The high-definition night vision cameras capture the pathetic scene unfolding outside my property line. Valerie, Calvin, and Nia are standing completely exposed in the middle of the torrential downpour. They are soaked to the bone. Their expensive clothes are plastered to their shivering bodies. Valerie's perfectly styled hair is flattened against her skull, and the heavy designer makeup she uses to project her false superiority is running down her face in dark, muddy streaks. Calvin is shivering violently, wrapping his arms around himself while staring helplessly at the impenetrable iron gates. Nia is sobbing openly, her mascara-stained tears mixing with the freezing rain. They look like exactly what they are. Three broken, desperate people who tried to steal a kingdom and ended up entirely exiled in the storm. I pick up a large black umbrella from the brass stand by the door. I do not press the button to open the gates. I do not invite them out of the cold. I step out the front door and walk slowly down the long, winding driveway. The rain pounds against the thick canopy of my umbrella, keeping me perfectly dry and completely untouched by the chaos swirling around them. As I approach the iron gates, they see me walking through the darkness. Valerie rushes forward, wrapping her wet hands around the cold metal bars. "Maya," she cries out, her voice cracking with raw desperation. "Thank God. Maya, please, you have to cancel the debt. The bank took the house. They took the cars. We have absolutely nowhere to go. You cannot do this to your own family. We are your blood." I stop exactly 3 feet away from the gate. I look at the woman who gave birth to me. I look at the hands gripping the iron bars, the same hands that eagerly signed the relinquishment waiver to steal my grandfather's legacy just days ago. "You are not my family, Valerie." I state, my voice cutting through the sound of the pouring rain with absolute chilling clarity. "You are just a woman who shared my DNA and weaponized it whenever it was financially convenient for you. You did not come here tonight because you love me. You did not come here to apologize for treating me like a disposable burden for 27 years. You came here because the trap you happily walked into finally snapped shut, and you want me to pry the metal jaws off your ankles." Calvin steps up to the gate, standing right beside his wife. He looks at me with wide, terrified eyes. Maya, please, Calvin begs, his voice shaking violently in the cold. We were wrong. We were so incredibly wrong. We let Connor blind us. We let the money blind us. We will do anything you want. We will publicly apologize. We will go to the church and tell them the truth. Just please make Apex Holdings drop the $15 million lien. We are too old to start over with absolutely nothing. I shake my head, letting a cold, humorless smile touch my lips. You did not let Connor blind you, Calvin. You eagerly followed him because his arrogance matched your greed. You sat in that kitchen and watched him threaten to throw me out on the street. You stood in that church and played the victim while my mother tried to destroy my name. You did not care about starting over with nothing when you thought you were doing it to me. Nia pushes her way to the front of the gate, sobbing hysterically. She grabs the iron bars, her knuckles turning white. Maya, look at me, Nia wails. Connor left me. He filed for divorce and he took whatever hidden cash he had left. The landlord changed the locks on my apartment. I have no money. I have no husband. I have absolutely nothing. You took everything from me. I look my older sister directly in the eyes. I did not take a single thing from you, Nia. I reply, my tone completely devoid of any pity. You signed your own name on those documents. You celebrated in that boardroom. You drank that expensive champagne and you mocked me on my way out the door. You built your entire identity on looking down on me, and now you are standing in the freezing rain begging for my charity. Valerie lets out a loud, desperate sob, falling to her knees in the mud right outside the gate. She reaches her hand through the iron bars, grasping blindly at the empty air between us. Maya, please, I am your mother. Valerie screams, the sound tearing at her throat. I gave you life. You owe me. You cannot just turn your back on us and walk away. I stand perfectly still under the shelter of my black umbrella. I look down at the woman kneeling in the dirt. I feel absolutely no anger anymore. I feel no residual trauma. I feel nothing but profound, absolute peace. The invisible chains of the black tax, the suffocating weight of their toxic expectations, the desperate childhood need for their conditional approval, it is all entirely gone. I have completely severed the generational curse. I look down at them without an ounce of pity. You abandoned me at Grandpa's house 27 years ago, I say, my voice steady and resolute, echoing with absolute finality. Today I am just giving you exactly what you gave me, my back. I do not wait for their response. I do not listen to the frantic screaming and begging that erupts behind me. I turn around and I walk away. My heels click rhythmically against the wet pavement of my private driveway. I leave them outside the iron gates, locked out of my life and my empire forever. The rain continues to pour, washing the last remnants of their toxic presence away from my property line. I walk back into my grand foyer, closing the heavy oak door behind me and locking it with a solid, definitive click. The house is warm and incredibly quiet. I set my umbrella in the brass stand. I turn slowly and look directly into the camera, my posture impeccable, my expression radiating pure, absolute power. Grandpa taught me how to build generational wealth. I state, looking dead into the lens, my voice smooth and commanding. But his greatest lesson was this: never hand the keys to your kingdom to the people waiting to burn it down.